What happens when the only thing a person believes in turns out to be a lie? Not a heartbreak or a betrayal from a person, but something deeper than that. I mean, the kind of pain that comes where your entire way of understanding the world collapses in front of you. The kind that leaves you standing there quiet, unable to even be angry yet, because your mind is still trying to process what just happened. This is the kind of pain Hiromi Higuruma from the anime Jujutsu Kaisen represents. When most people think of Jujutsu Kaisen, they think of cursed spirits, flashy fights and chaos. But then Higuruma enters the story and for a brief moment, the series becomes something else entirely. It becomes frighteningly human. Because Higuruma is not introduced through strength, rather he was introduced when he was exhausted. He does not look like a hero. He does not carry the presence of someone destined for greatness. He looks like a man who has not rested for years. A plain suit, tired eyes, and nothing dramatic, and that is exactly why he feels so real. Some people become tired because they are lazy, and some because life is hard. But there is another kind of tiredness people rarely talk about, and that is the kind that comes from caring in a world that does not. Higuruma was a defense attorney in Japan. That detail matters more than many viewers may think. Japan's criminal justice system has often been criticized for an extremely high conviction rate, often cited around 99% once cases go to full trial. On paper, that sounds like efficiency, but in reality, many critics argue it reflects a system where prosecutors bring only those cases they are almost certain to win, where confessions carry enormous weight, and where once you are accused, the momentum of the system begins moving against you. Imagine trying to defend people inside a system designed to keep convicting them, and that was Higuruma's life. He was not chasing fame. He was not the kind of lawyer who wanted status or easy money. He moved away from safer paths and took on public defense work because he could not tolerate seeing people crushed without someone standing beside them. There are people in every profession who do the bare minimum, and Higuruma was the opposite. He was one of those rare people who still believed that work could mean service, and those people often suffer the most. Because when you genuinely believe in something, its failure affects you immediately. And then came Keita Oe, who was one of Higuruma's clients. He was accused of robbery murder under circumstances that felt uncertain. Higuruma took the case when many would have avoided it. He fought, argued, and did what a real defense lawyer is supposed to do, which is to remind the court that accusation is not proof. And somehow, against all the odds, he won. For a brief moment, the world made sense again, but then the appeal came. No dramatic new revelation, no groundbreaking evidence. Just a higher court overturning the verdict and sentencing Keita Oe to life imprisonment. This is what makes the scene devastating. There is no anime villain behind it, nor any monster laughing in the shadows. No music can fully express what it feels to watch years of belief erased in a few moments. And if you watch Keita Oe's face at that moment, there was another layer of pain hidden there. The look he gave to Higuruma is difficult to forget because it can be read in so many human ways at once. There is confusion, disappointment, and there may even be accusations. But above all, there is the look of a man whose last hope has just died. Keita cannot glare at the court at that moment and change anything. He cannot punish the judges. He cannot reach the prosecutors. So his eyes fell on the one person who stood closest to hope, and that is Higuruma. And Higuruma understands it. He knows the anger is unfair, yet he cannot reject it, because deep down he blames himself too. This is the moment his curse technique awakens. But it is also important to understand that this is not a power-up seen in the usual anime sense. Instead, this is a grief taking on shape. In Jujutsu Kaisen, cursed energy comes from negative human emotions like fear, regret, sorrow. Higuruma's awakening is one of the most purest examples of that concept. A man crushed by institutional injustice generates power not through ambition but through heartbreak. And so his curse technique gets manifested through a Shikigami named the Judgment. The Judgment is one of the most brilliant designs in the entire series because it looks strange, unsettling, almost absurd at the first glance. A heavy-bodied figure with a stern face, distorted proportions, and the aura of something both mechanical and divine. It does not resemble a noble angel of justice. It does not look elegant either, rather it appears stern. Why? Because Higuruma's relationship with law is not elegant anymore. The judgment embodies justice stripped of romance. It is not Lady Justice holding scales in a polished marble. It is justice after disappointment, cold, blunt, and humorless. Its large form suggests weight because law is heavy, sentences are heavy, and lives are changed by a few spoken words. Its face feels emotionless because institutions often feel emotionless. Courts can make decisions about the future while keeping personal information private. Its presence is intimidating because once judgment begins, ordinary people feel small, and yet judgment is also pure in a way human courts are not. It cannot be bribed, it does not care about status, it simply evaluates according to the rules placed before it. In a painful irony, the most honest judge Higuruma has ever found had to be created from cursed energy. And that tells you everything about his psychology. Because his domain expansion, the deadly sentencing, turns battle into a courtroom. Because the courtroom is still the center of his soul. Despite being betrayed by it, some people leave broken systems and never look back, leaving a lasting impression on others. Like a teacher betrayed by education continues to think like a teacher. Or a soldier betrayed by war still thinks in discipline. Or a lawyer betrayed by law still sees the world through judgment, evidence, and innocence. And that is Higuruma. What makes his story so moving is that he does not become evil in the simple sense. He becomes disillusioned, and there is a difference. He does not lash out because he never cared. He lashes out because he cared too much. This emotion is familiar to many adults, including those who are not lawyers. The employee who once loved the company but became skeptical after witnessing favoritism, or the citizen who believed in fairness until corruption affected their family. And so some of the coldest people were once the warmest. And then you see Hiromi Higuruma in the Culling Games. After everything we had already learned about him, after watching a man lose faith in the legal system he once dedicated his life to, the next part of his story becomes even more important. Because backstories can explain the pain, but only the present choices reveal the real character. In the past, anyone might appear tragic. The real question is who they become when they use suffering as a source of power. That is when Higuruma's fight with Yuji Itadori begins. At first, it feels like a clash between two strangers. One is a lawyer turned executioner and the other is a boy crushed by guilt, still carrying the emotional wreckage of Shibuya inside him. But beneath the punches and curse techniques, this fight is not about winning, rather it is about judgment. It is about whether a broken man still has enough humanity left inside him to recognize the innocence when it stands in front of him. Higuruma's domain expansion, the deadly sentencing, remains one of the most brilliant abilities in the series because it tells us everything about the person using it. Most domains overwhelm enemies with force because they trap you in violence, but Higuruma's domain traps you in a procedure. In this domain expansion, the battlefield is transformed into a court where violence is forbidden and arguments matter more than fists. The trial is presided over by the Shikigami judgment, with Higuruma serving as the prosecutor. It is a supernatural ability, yes, but emotionally it is something much deeper. It is a man recreating the one place that shaped and destroyed him. Think about that. Some people when wounded by a system run from it forever, but Higuruma carries the courtroom inside his soul. Even after it betrayed him, he still thinks about charges, evidence and verdict, and that is painfully realistic. Therefore, his domain is not just a power, it is a trauma in the form of architecture, and in the center of it sits the judgment. The stitches over judgment's eyes are especially important because justice is often symbolized as blind. But Higuruma's story questions whether blindness is always a virtue. Sometimes systems cover their eyes not to remain fair, but to avoid taking responsibility. They refuse to see nuance, suffering and humanity. So when the judgment later forces its eye open through those stitches in rage, bleeding as it does so, it feels symbolic. It's as if justice can no longer stand pretending not to see. So the first accusation against Yuji is almost laughable, where he enters a pachinko parlor while underage. A minor offense, something many viewers might dismiss instantly, but that is exactly how real systems often work. Many people are not crushed by grand crimes. They are worn down by paperwork, loopholes and rules they barely understand. Yuji tries to reason his way through it. He answers honestly but awkwardly. He over-explains, but at the end, he loses. And that too feels real. Because how many people have hurt themselves during interviews by talking too much? And how many have signed documents that they didn't understand? So Higuruma's domain punishes Yuji with confiscation, which removes his cursed energy, and suddenly the physically strongest thing Yuji had to protect himself is gone. But even without cursed energy, Yuji keeps fighting. This is one of the most overlooked moments in the battle because strength without power is a character. When status disappears, when talent is stripped away, what remains is the person. Yuji is injured and cornered, but he still keeps moving ahead. As a result, Higuruma begins to respect him before he even realizes it. The fight itself is brutal. Higuruma's gavel shifts shape, expands and returns to his hand like Thor's hammer. He fights with discipline, not rage. Every strike feels purposeful, indicating that he is not a berserker but a professional. That also suits his character because real dangerous people are often calm. However, the battle eventually changes from being a physical conflict to a spiritual one, and then Yuji asks for a retrial. This time, the accusation is not a minor offense. It was a mass murder during the Shibuya incident, where hundreds were dead and bodies were everywhere. And now the story reaches one of its most human moments. Yuji is aware that he has an argument. He knows Sukuna was the one in control and that legally and factually he could defend himself. But he confesses without any hesitation. He says that he did it. But why would someone accept blame for something that they did not commit directly? And this is because guilt does not always obey logic. This is where many viewers feel connected with Yuji more than they realize. There are people who blame themselves for their parents' divorce, people who carry guilt for accidents they could not prevent, and human beings do this all the time. The mind often chooses guilt because guilt feels more manageable than helplessness. If it was my fault, maybe I could have changed it. It hurts less than accepting that terrible things can happen beyond our control. And Yuji carries Shibuya that way. The judgment then reacts violently, tearing open its stitched eyes and delivering the toughest sentence possible, which is confiscation and then death penalty. Higuruma then receives the executioner's sword, a weapon that kills in a single strike. And this is where the true Higuruma is revealed. He now holds what many wounded people secretly desire: absolute power over another human being, the right to punish and the ability to end someone who has already admitted guilt. Many people think character is shown when someone is powerless, but often it is shown more clearly when they finally gain power, because pain can quickly escalate into cruelty. And then Higuruma moves into strike. Yuji is defenseless here, so he throws chairs, clothing and anything that he can do to create distance, fighting like a desperate human being rather than a chosen hero. There is no flashy speech or anything, just survival. But right before the killing blow lands, Higuruma stops. Why? Because evidence had already shown him the truth. It was Sukuna who was responsible for Shibuya incident and Yuji was not in control. By law, Yuji was innocent of the crime he confessed to. And Higuruma realizes something even deeper. He's looking at the boy willing to blame himself for deaths caused to his own body. A boy trying to be accountable in a world where most adults consistently avoid accountability. That side reawakens the part of Higuruma that became a lawyer in the first place. The sword then disappears from his hands and Yuji's punch lands on Higuruma. Higuruma falls back into the theater seats, but spiritually he is not defeated. It is an awakening because sometimes losing a fight is how a person wins against themselves. Then the conversation that follows up is one of the most human moments in the entire series. Two people sitting there both carrying guilt, both believing they are responsible for things they couldn't control, and both are trying to make sense of it in their own way. Higuruma tells Yuji the truth that legally and logically he is innocent. However, Yuji refuses to accept it because guilt is sometimes about feeling rather than the law, and Higuruma understands this better than anyone else. That's why he gives Yuji his points, not as a grand gesture but as something he can still do right. But he doesn't join him because he knows that staying close to someone like Yuji, someone who still holds on to that kind of moral clarity, would force him to confront what he has become. And sometimes people are not ready for that. When you step back and look at this entire sequence, it doesn't feel like a fight anymore, but more like a reflection of real life. People enter systems they don't fully understand, believing those systems will protect them. But those systems are not always built for fairness. They're designed for order, efficiency, and outcomes. And when those systems fail, the damage is not just external but also internal. A person who once cared starts questioning everything, and then one day, something as simple as a conversation or a person brings it all back. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. And that's what Higuruma shows us, that losing faith in systems or people is almost unavoidable, but losing yourself is a choice. Because even after everything he went through, even after becoming someone completely different, there was still a part of him that could recognize what is right when he saw it again. And that's important, because in real life you won't always get that clarity, but you will get moments where you have to decide whether you are going to act based on your pain or based on your values. Those moments go unnoticed by most people. They act out of anger or frustration, but Higuruma noticed it. Even at his lowest point, he paused, reflected, and made a different decision. And that's the real lesson. You don't need to be perfect, but you should never let your worst experiences decide the kind of person you are. Because if you do, then the things that hurt you will win twice. In the end, Higuruma is not a character who teaches us how to win or how to succeed. He teaches us something much quieter and much more important about how to hold on to a part of yourself even when everything around you gives you a reason to let it go. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.